Hello, this is John Michael Chambers, JMCBroadcasting.com. This is a special broadcast. I got a hold of the very busy man, Josh Reid, busy doing a lot, his patriotic work in podcasting. Follow Josh Reid for sure. Many of our viewers already do. And right out of the gate, for those news, a lot of new folks coming aboard. Josh and I go back many years, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. Tell people right out of the gate now, and we'll close out with it as well. Where can people follow your work, Josh Reid? Because the new people here, you want to follow Josh.
Yeah, very easy. Redpills.tv. REDPILLS.tv. Can't get any
Excellent.
simpler than that.
You won't be sorry, folks. When you look up the terms deep dive research in the dictionary, you see his face. Trust me, if you want to go deep and get the details, this is the guy who's got it all for you. And that's why I'm happy to have Josh here. I'm going to get right into it, folks. Scientists, 10 dead, 5 missing, most notably David Wilcock, with a focus on, shall we say, off-planet activity and other related matters. Now, this comes at a time where President Trump has announced that we may expect somewhat soon the beginning of the files being released on Area 51 and UFOs and so forth. And so is this a coincidence? I find it highly suspect. Call me crazy. What are your views, Josh, about the 10 scientists reported dead, including David, and the 5 missing? What's your take on this?
Oh man. Well, so a number of things is I've been actually on this topic for quite a while, quite a few years. I've been involved in this. I have a few different contacts in Washington, D.C., within Congress, within the DoD, various intelligence agencies. You know this. We've talked about this before. And this is one topic that I get updated on occasionally. And a lot of the information that I've been getting last few months, and I actually put this out before this became a trend, is that the 10 missing scientists, and there's 9 missing scientists, or 9 missing or dead scientists, and General McCaslin, who was the head of Wright Pat Air Force Advanced Research Lab, retired back in 2014. He's missing as well. And the number is actually significantly higher. If you just go for the last 18 months, that number is probably around 25. The most recent they added to that was Amy Eskridge, who was a parent, unalived herself 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And she has some very interesting connections because there's Havana syndrome connections to her. You have Matt Sullivan, who was in the intelligence community. He was set to testify in front of Congress. And a week before he was set to testify, he died of apparent accidental drug overdose. You're seeing all of this happen right now, right in front of our eyes. And there's a lot of reasoning behind why this could be happening. So one thing that's happening in the Trump administration, if we go back a few months ago, there is this kind of play that occurs within what I call the constructive narratives of Washington, D.C. and politics. You have Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, coming out on podcast saying that President Trump has a speech ready for aliens and UFO disclosure. And they're like, oh my God, really? This is crazy. 2 days later, former President Barack Obama comes out and he's asked a question, are aliens real? And he goes, yeah, they are real. And people are like, wait, what did he just say? Now, Trump comes out and comments on Barack Obama and says he shouldn't have done that. He said he was getting that from classified information, and now I have to release it all. And then the government goes out there, reserves aliens.gov. And this looks more like kind of like a planned sequence of things. I don't want to say that he was planned with Obama, but hey, this is kind of the way the flow of things was going. Then we start getting into McCaslin goes missing and other people start to die off, and we start to see the trend line back in the history. And this is the perspective I want people to begin to have. In 52, after the Holloman UFO meeting, so this was Eisenhower, U.S. military, they go to Holloman Air Force Base and they go into a hangar after a UFO lands and they meet with some type of aliens or some type of beings that are not human. We'll just call it that, non-human intelligence. And apparently in this meeting, they made a deal. Now, what that deal was, I don't know the details of it. We have rumors and stuff like this of it. But what begins to happen at that point is you start getting the national security directives. You start getting all of the war powers framework that really constructs our military right now. And much of this framework that set up the Department of Energy, that built out this whole compartmentalization structure of how the intelligence apparatus actually works, was developed around keeping secret the technology that was being acquired by the US government with this exotic technology from advanced civilizations that we've discovered in archaeological digs, or maybe even from non-human intelligence that was being given to us. And one of the ways that Eisenhower did this is that they basically buried it under SAP programs. So you have various different SAP programs. You have WooSAPs, USAPs, SAPs, CAPs, all of these different things. And so you have waived special access programs, unacknowledged special access programs. And this is just a way to funnel money into these projects without congressional oversight. So once it goes into there, the military takes it into the national labs, it takes it into all of the propulsion laboratories, but then it gets contracted out there directly through kind of like the National Science Foundation in the DOE and various different contracts. A lot of universities get involved in this, but primarily this technology is held and the scientists working on it are from defense contractors or the military industrial complex. So when Eisenhower warned, be warned of the military industrial complex, he was saying this because he just gifted them all of this highly advanced technology that nobody knew anything about, and in hopes that they could reverse engineer it. But he knew that at some point that they could become more powerful than nations on this planet. Now, I believe that this move was done primarily to protect this technology from the globalists, from the cabal, from the deep state. We actually see a trend of this. Now, I mean, it's a logical question, John, is if the deep state had access to advanced extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or exotic technology, faster than light propulsion, directed energy weapons that could beam anywhere on the planet at any point in time, don't you think that they would already rule the world and they would have depopulated by 85% by now?
Without
I
question.
think they would have.
No question.
Without a question.
Yeah.
So that means that somebody was holding that technology from them. And we call them the white hats, right? Those are the white hats. So we've been holding that technology from them for a very, very long time until our science could catch up to be able to actually reverse engineer this technology and begin integrating it. But to do that, you have to build a new infrastructure, new types of frameworks. You have to have supercomputing. You have to have all of these things. They cracked faster than light travel from these craft back in the 1980s. The problem is controlling the technology because it operates at such a high data throughput and high energy throughput that we didn't have the computational technology to actually operate it. But now with the advancements of quantum computers and stuff like that, we have the technology. So this is what we need to see, is that the military industrial complex, they have this technology. They figured out and reverse engineered a lot of it. But John, they have the next 250 years of technological development and advancement at the palm of their hands. They have insurability and survivability of profit for the next 250 years.
Wow.
Now, anytime that someone rose up in the scientific community that was maybe developing research or a technology that would deviate towards the discovery that they've already found out that's clandestine and secret, what do they have to do? They have to get rid of them. And they start to take these people out. Why? Because it's a competitive landscape. We're talking about survivability of their whole infrastructure for the next 250 years. But Donald Trump has different plans. And what I got from someone I know directly in Washington, D.C., I'm not going to give positions or names, but is that we are in the midst of what's known as an executive reauthorization over this technology. And what that means, and I just had Congressman Tim Burchett on my show. Okay, Congressman Tim Burchett's been talking about this, and I said, are we witnessing right now? Because this is the words that I was told by someone in D.C. to tell Burchett. And I said, are we witnessing an executive reauthorization over this technology? He goes, yes, absolutely. What that means is that the president is now going out there and saying, hey, Eisenhower was good to do this, to hold it off for a while, but guess what? Now we're taking the technology back. And so this culminated last week with reports that DNI Tulsi Gabbard, last week, she landed at Nellis Air Base in Nevada, got on a Janet flight, and flew over to Area 51 by direction of President Trump.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Now, something just happened Friday, right after this. Remember, this is Friday. Trump fired the entire board of the National Science Foundation.
Wow.
And who did I tell you is... Yep. Who's the intermediary for all this information and the control of it? The National Science Foundation board. They're the gatekeepers. So things are happening right now. And what you're seeing is Trump is going in, trying to regain control over this technology and bring it back into the military. So with the dead scientists and missing people, I think a lot of the missing people are being taken for national security reasons. I think the white hats are going out there, grabbing them, bringing
Yeah.
them back and saying, hey, your life is being threatened because of what you know. And I think some of them over the last 18 months have died because of these threats. And by the way, it's not just US scientists. Chinese scientists, Russian scientists, and European scientists are dying around the world in the same perspective. So someone is trying to keep a monopoly on this technology, and it really only points to one position. Now, at least that's my theory on this and in the information that I've gotten.
Well, thank you very much. A lot of information there and a lot that I've learned, and I'm sure our audience has. You know, I'm glad you raised because it would have been a question, follow up. How many of these scientists are in the proverbial Valhalla? And you've indicated that perhaps some are, and perhaps some are no longer with us. And I think that's probably the case. And it seems to me this subject that you've just taken on with us, this is really, even though we have all these other things going on, Russiagate, you know, Comey going down, all roads lead to Obama, military tribunals, Nuremberg 2.0 coming down the line, so forth and so on, reporting from Gitmo, all these incredible things in this global war that we're engaged in. This subject tops them all, bar none. It's no surprise to me how dangerous it is to those that have knowledge and access that this has occurred. I'm going to move to another subject and have you
Sure.
unload on this subject. Let's talk about Kash Patel for a moment. We'll take on two quick things there. One is SPLC. That's now been revealed. That is a big story. You've got the Clinton Foundation, probably next runner-up. What's your views of what's been revealed on SPLC due to the work that Kash Patel has released?
So what we're seeing right now is that the Southern Poverty Law Center was indicted last week, obviously by the FBI, by Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general. Now, go back a week before.
Mm-hmm.
Pam Bondi gets fired by Donald Trump. One thing that I've been calling for this entire administration for the firing of Pam Bondi. Now,
Yep.
I was not a Todd Blanche fan. Todd Blanche was Trump's personal lawyer in the New York case, Letitia James, all this stuff. Trump trusts him, so I must trust him too. But I do believe he covered up the Epstein files, and that is a completely different reason why. And actually, this is beginning to come out now why that, but we can go into that some other time. But Todd Blanche comes out right after when he comes in as acting attorney general and says, we're about to move at hyper speed. And people are like, what? And he goes, we are about to move faster than you've ever moved before, right? So Todd Blanche comes out and he begins moving faster than we've seen anything begin to move. I mean, you have Act Blue that's under investigation. You have Cassidy Hutchinson from J6, the liars, being investigated. You have the Southern Poverty Law Center that's indicted. You have the whole John Brennan grand
Yeah.
jury case in Southern
Yeah.
Florida and Fort Pierce, Florida, is being reorganized. You have Joe DeGenova that is going down there. That's freaking huge. Like, this is like Todd Blanche comes in and all of a sudden we're at hyperspace
Yeah.
with how fast this is going. So Southern Poverty Law Center, John, is the first domino. And this is what to understand. A nonprofit organization going out there, obviously fighting hate and
Oh, yeah.
injustice for all and anti-Semitism and all this stuff. But what they were doing is they were funding both sides. They were funding influencers on social media, left and right, and then they were funding organizations on both sides, including the Ku Klux Klan and other radical right-wing organizations, to the point where they would fund this organization and this organization's left and the right, and then they would help sponsor an event and invite those groups to the event, like Charlottesville, and then
Yeah.
somebody would die there, and they would utilize that as anti-right rhetoric to get
Sure.
away with why they're right or radical and all this stuff. In other words, they were defrauding all of their patrons. They were running influence and psychological warfare operations directly through the SPLC. And here's the key. 2 days before the indictment, Tim Cook, Apple CEO,
Mhm.
resigns.
That's right.
Trump comes out and says, hey, I love Tim Cook. Tim Cook's a good guy. Who was one of the primary donors of the SPLC? Tim Cook.
There you
Now,
go.
who is one of the other donors to the SPLC? George Soros's Open Society Foundation. And this is where we start to understand why I'm saying this is the first small little mini domino. If we go back to Minnesota with the ICE riots and the ICE protests and the people that, remember, they were organized. They were using the Signal app.
Sure.
They had maps out of ICE operations. You had leaked information coming from law enforcement directly into these groups. You had the assistant mayor, the assistant governor of Minnesota involved in these groups directly. They were utilizing the communist manifestos of color revolutions to implement this. And this was being funded by the Tides Foundation, the Forge Foundation, George Soros's Open Society Foundation. They announced then that they're investigating these NGOs for their active involvement in this, including other different events, including the 2020 Summer of Love and other things that were happening. Well, how do you begin to put pressure on those organizations to get people to start to turncoat? Well, you take down one small little low-hanging fruit like SPLC that directly links and connects to the George Soros Open Society Foundation, and then that opens up a bigger grand scale. Now, this shooter, Cole Allen, who just did the Washington White House Correspondents' Dinner, he has a direct connection to, guess what, Stacey Abrams and her NGO and Black Lives Matter, which is funded by George Soros. So now we start seeing this interconnectivity web, right? And George Soros, why is this so important? There's a board post out there that I think is actually relatively important to just kind of talk about right now. And that one's 2126. And it's, how do you know when something very big is about to drop? A tax increase from all directions. FISA corruption. You have more than you know. Now think about this. That's where we are there right now. Because, John, you remember on the boards, all three movies playing simultaneously? FISA-gate, Guardians of the Pedophiles, and Panic at DC. That is where we are at right now. Act Blue being taken down. You have campaign money laundering from foreign influence. You have them moving money in the shell organization, spoofing credit card information that was given to them through Act Blue, and then giving that into Democrat campaigns, acting as if it was regular donors. You have the mortgage fraud investigations that are going on. Todd Blanche just announced this. You have it doing at the state level as well. What was going on with that? If you remember, Letitia James and Adam Schiff were indicted on this mortgage fraud, and they didn't really stick, but that was just a warning sign because they had two primary residences. Well, what were they doing with the primary residences? Why would you have two primary residences? It's not because you get a better mortgage rate. It was because that becomes your primary residence. You can now go out there and requalify that mortgage. So they worked with the large financial institutions that were in on the deep state. And what they would do is one woman, she's a politician down in Texas, was just indicted. She had a $400,000 home and took out over $6.4 million worth of mortgages on one home. Here's the thing, is the banks never reported it. The banks didn't even care. The mortgages just disappeared. Why? Because that was the infrastructure that they built to reappropriate money from people like George Soros. Taxpayer money goes to Ukraine, flows back to NGOs, NGOs back to the United States, and then they go buy a second house. They buy it for $300,000. They go out and take 10 mortgages. They make $5 million. That house gets sold. All cash, nobody has to claim anything, everything's all good. Well, this is the same thing that's going on in Arizona with the cartels. This is all under investigation. But now go back to July 2016, John. There is an email sent at the heart of all of the beginning of Russia, and FISA-gate. The email is from a guy by the name of Lenny Bernardo. He is an executive director at the Open Society Foundations, George Soros. He sent in an email to one of his collaborators in the Open Society Foundations in Europe. And the email says, hey, Julianne Smith, he names her, Julianne Smith, who was the foreign policy advisor to the Clinton campaign, just confirmed to me that HRC has agreed to the Russian smear campaign on Donald Trump. Then he goes on to say, although we don't have the information right now, we are working with two of our partners, Threat Connect and CrowdStrike, to get the information. Now, this is so critically important because that's the smoking gun evidence that premeditated Russia smear campaign against Donald Trump that sparked off FISA-gate, Crossfire Hurricane, Crossfire Razor against Flynn. And what do we see here is George Soros was directly behind this. So when we start to look at, Bruce and Nellie Orr, we start to look at Fusion GPS and the origination of the Steele dossier, who was funding that? Oh, it was the DNC, but who gave the money to the DNC? How did the DNC get that money to fund that? I guarantee you it's going to be directly connected to the Open Society Foundations. And so what I like to do for everybody is when you start looking at the DOJ, what's going on right now, Southern Poverty Law Center is the first domino of much bigger dominoes. We had Chuck Grassley just send criminal indictments over to
Yes.
the DOJ about the Hillary Clinton Foundation and her
Next.
connectivity to Uranium One and Benghazi and all of this stuff. So
Mhm.
you got to go back to another Q post that says FISA equals start, think layers, foundation. And when you
You
begin to
go.
understand this, is I always look at 2016, I go forward and I go backwards. You go backwards, you get Benghazi, you get Uranium One, you get Fast and Furious, you get the selling off of SAP programs that was in Hillary Clinton's home email server. Then you go forward, what do you get? You get the Steele dossier, Crossfire Hurricane, Crossfire Razor, taking down General Flynn, the targeting of President Trump, Mueller investigation, impeachment one. Then you get the 2018 midterm elections. George Soros, remember, George Soros went out there and funded attorney generals, governors, and secretary of states. In 2018, we had no idea why he was focused on these certain states and these attorney generals and secretary of states. We wouldn't know until 2020 why that mattered, which means that it was also preempted. But then 2019, you get impeachment number two. And this is where the impeachment number two is so important. Donald Trump is on a phone call with President Zelensky in Ukraine, and he goes, President Zelensky, do you have the server? Burisma. CrowdStrike. I'd like to have my DOJ take a look at it. That is what got him impeached. Where this is where Cimarella and Vindman, this is where they went the shift. They met with the IG. This is what got that all started. That is under investigation right now. That has indictments coming out right now. And why is that important? Because that server in Burisma was CrowdStrike. What did George Soros, Lenny Bernardo say? CrowdStrike was going to produce the media. What are we talking about? We're talking about the manipulation of Alpha Bank files that were used to come against Donald Trump in the Mueller investigation. We're talking about potential criminality in the 2016 election using falsified Russian IP addresses in close proximity to Burisma in Ukraine to try to steal the 2016 election for Hillary Clinton that got shut down by Vladimir Putin on that night. And by the way, Burisma, if people don't remember, this is Devin Archer. This is Hunter Biden's company that they were on the board of directors of. Now, fast forward to 2020, you get COVID-19 that hits, John. And what did the states do? The Secretary of States who run the elections in the states, they go out there and they change the election laws without the approval of Congress. Instead, they send it up to the attorney generals and they get it approved for mail-in ballots. Now, in 2020, we're like, how the hell did they do that? Well, remember, George Soros is the one that funded the Secretary of States and the Attorney Generals in 2018 midterms. So in 2020, we learned why, because he knew COVID-19 was coming, because he had already invested in zoological virus detection. He'd been funding this research within the commercial organizations for a long time. And then you get into the J6 assassination attempt. You get into all this other stuff that happened after that. All of this is interconnected and it is happening right now. Timing is everything. I said that we're going to have a red wave in November. And the reason is because you are about to see accountability and justice over the course of the next 5 months with indictments, with people being
That's right.
perp walked, with the Eric Swalwell out right now. People are like, that was a Democrat operation. No, that was absolutely 100% a white hat operation. You're probably going to see a Republican governor of California for the first time in like 15 years because of Swalwell getting taken out. This is huge. And what you're seeing is the white hats, the good people, the Trump admin, it's no holds barred. We're going full
That's right.
glory. We're going to take your asses down and we're going to do this very, very quick. And then right after the 2026 midterms, it's back to normal. We're going to bring you into the golden age.
Wow. That's why I have Josh Reid on here. And for anybody in our movement that says nothing's getting done, excuse me, cut this segment and share it with them. End of conversation. Thank you, Josh. Also, I'm glad you raised that point. It's been something on my mind. I just spoke with another person on a program about this, and one of the last parts you mentioned, that the time frame between now and midterms is critical, because the way things look, at least on the surface right now, the midterms aren't looking good. But you nailed it. I agree with you. The takedown is now happening, and all the things you just touched on and what we forecast to come as a result of that will ensure massive victory at the midterms, in my opinion. Whether
Agreed.
SAVE Act passes or not matters not, because Trump has the national emergency ready to go and we'll get free and fair elections. I want to talk, pedal back a bit. We opened this all up when I asked about Cash Patel and SPLC. Well,
Oh,
Cash Patel, it's okay. Cash Patel, in my opinion, as soon as the handcuffs get slapped on Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Strzok, and that clan, which he has said recently on Maria Bartiromo, these arrests are coming and soon. Well, when that happens, Cash Patel goes down in the history books with very, very, very wonderful flying colors, in my opinion. Now, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Strzok, these folks, would you agree that this is, we'll call it, as powerful as those positions and people and corrupt as they were, and how instrumental they were into the massive mess of Russiagate and some of the stuff you touched on? Would it be a fair statement to say this is the low-lying fruit? Don't forget, we have the target audience, those just coming aboard, looking around. Things have to be done strategically and properly. They go down first, and what? All roads lead to who? Per who? All roads lead to Obama, per President Trump. This begins that trajectory. Two-part question. Would you agree with that statement? And part two, in your crystal ball, I know you do not know the answer. Since all roads lead to Obama, and this is the trajectory that will take us there, and per the President of the United States, he committed treason, and per the President of the United States reminding us the punishment for treason is execution. Having said all that, not conspiracy, President Trump, we're commenting on it. Having said that, two-part question. Do you agree these folks I just mentioned are the low-lying fruit to the trajectory that brings Obama down? In part two, does Obama get processed? Of course, it's in tribunals. Does he get processed pre or post midterm?
okay. So my thoughts on this, yes, they are absolutely middle management, low hanging fruit, and you already have a massive amount of turncoats. I talked about this on my show. James Comey, for anybody that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know, James Comey, if you remember when he did the 8647
Oh, yeah.
post on his X account, that wasn't that was him signaling to the Secret Service, come and bring me to Washington, D.C. I got some things to tell you. It was right after James Comey's visit when he talked with Secret Service in Washington, D.C., that Cash Patel mysteriously found burn bags in a secret hidden room in the FBI and all of these drives and folders on the FBI computer systems. It was James Comey, who is a cooperating witness in the John Brennan investigation in Fort Pierce, Florida. It was James Comey who put out a video, really cryptic, about Taylor Swift's song. And when he met Taylor Swift for the first time, went to her first concert, and he says it was 15 years ago. Well, at that date and time, 15 years ago would have been the beginning of FISAgate. And the song was Exile, where he basically saying goodbye to the deep state, and he's opening a new door and going and doing his own new thing. So I think that James Comey is one of the turncoats that is basically turning all of this operation around for them, or unveiling it, things that they already knew. But you got to remember, the military has had it all for a long time, but how do you enter evidence legally? And that's where all of this comes in. We have to do it the legal right way. Now, do I believe that this all leads to Obama? Yes, I absolutely do. That this all leads to Barack Obama, and that the eventuality is that Obama is either going to get take it out post midterms. And I would say post midterms. I would
Okay.
not say pre. Post midterms, arrested, perp walked, possibly. I think that would be absolute gangster of Donald Trump. But I have a feeling that it's going to be more of a Rommel trial.
Yeah.
It's going to be one night Barack Obama was on a surfing accident and he's no longer with us. It's
Oh,
going to be
okay.
A Rommel trial. Very similar to what we saw with John McCain, who
Right,
he was
right.
left a pistol in his bedroom by the White Hats and said, "You make the choice and the decision." And 10 seconds later, he took his own thing, and they said that he died of cancer. No, John McCain was given a Rommel trial, and he took the coward's way out. And I think that
Re,
Barack
re,
Obama's be given a Rommel trial.
pardon me, just real quickly. Remember John Kasich? I think his name was that
John Kasich, yeah.
nutso congressman in Ohio. Uh, he he was on record. This was on like Fox News or something. The clips are still out there on YouTube where he said when John McCain was executed. I mean, whether he was executed or he killed himself, the fact that he said that on live mainstream news, it was a slip up perhaps, is interesting. Uh, Quick question, back to Comey for a minute. I would use these terms. Tell me if they line up with your narrative. Comey has basically effectively positioned himself away from being a target in the investigation to a witness in the investigation by being a turncoat, as you stated, with the hopes of leniency because he's got his pretty dirty hands himself. Would that be a fair analysis?
Yeah, I think that that's what Comey's hoping, but Todd Blanche has already redirected his focus and said that you can expect new indictments on James Comey to come. Now, last year about this time, I predicted all this, and I said that you will see James Comey be the first indictment. I said James Comey will be the first indictment, and then I said James Comey's indictment will not go through. It's some type of technicality, and he will be let go. And guess what happened? Exactly that. And the reason is because I knew that James Comey had made a deal, and I'm
Yes.
telling you. James Comey made a deal. So
Yeah.
Todd Blanche is going to go after him through other types of things. But I think that it's going to be the same thing. You're probably going to see things come, but it's not going to stick to James Comey, but it's going to stick to everybody else. Now, here's the key is Obama, this is middle level management. We're talking the big players here. This is the corporate infrastructure, the special interest and the foreign interest. This is the NGO infrastructure. This is the British imperial dynasty that operates through the old European aristocracy, the London bankers. This is what Trump has been dismantling for the last year.
Yes.
It is the Jewish mafia here in America. It is the aristocracy here in America, the big money aristocracy that's been at war with each other. This is very powerful and rich people that Dr. John Coleman called the Committee of 300, right?
Mhm.
That there's a wealthy groups of elite people who are trying to control the world, and they just got bamboozled, outplayed by
Oh, yeah.
Donald Trump. Their whole system is falling apart, dismantled. Iran is one of the keys to all of that. And it's glorious, John. We're
Yeah.
actually seeing it happen in real time, man.
You bet. Thank you. Let's talk. You pedal back. You mentioned Pam Bondi a bit ago. Enter Joe DeGeneva. Uh, has he been officially uh, posted? Joe
Yeah, he's been
DeGeneva?
sworn in. I believe
Okay.
he was sworn in, and this was last week. He was sworn in on like Monday or Tuesday, and then he immediately went down to Fort Pierce, Florida. Now this comes like 4 days after the U.S. attorney that was assigned to the grand jury resigned.
Mm.
And I don't think she resigned. I think she was fired, but that's just my opinion.
I'll tell you what, Joe DeGeneva is going to get the job done. He was on the front lines of the election theft back in the day, and he's pretty, to use Trump's New York expression, he's a tough cookie, and
Hmm.
I'm happy to see him there. I know you. I remember you on the record from day one on Pam Bondi. I was on the fence because I said, well, Trump put her there for a reason. But I never liked Pam Bondi, and I'm on the record for that too, because she was the attorney general, who actually wasn't the attorney general in my state of Florida back in the day. And then she became the attorney general. We had reached out to her. We had a pretty good following. We had it was a Safe America Foundation, a 501c4 I had at the time. We had public meetings. And we had 40,000 people in a database, and several hundred would show up every month to meetings. We had speakers. We were laying down the truth. And two people, and they would have wanted to come to us because we had the audience for them. They were Marco Rubio was running for Senate first time, and Pam Bondi was running for Attorney General first time. And out of all the different people that did come and speak before our group, those two would not show up. And it's very interesting. But Pam Bondi, there's other things I can talk about her, but I'm reluctant to do so at this time concerning, we'll say, a religious group. But
Well,
yeah.
me too. And there's three people that have been very hard on in the Trump administration: Pam Bondi, Susie Wiles,
Mhm.
and Kristi Noem. And I said that they're all going to get fired.
Well, Christy Nome
And
turned
look
out
who
to be
we
an
Kristi
interesting
Noem.
circumstance.
Yep,
Yeah.
Kristi Noem gone because she was sleeping with Corey Lewandowski and her husband's a cross-dressing cuck, right? And then you have Pam Bondi, who was apparently given information to Swalwell. So this was a week before Swalwell stuff happened. She was tipping off Swalwell. That's the rumor, at least in D.C., of why Pam Bondi was let go. And Susie Wiles, what did we just see come out about her? Is that Kristi Noem, when she was the head of the DHS, had requested an increase in Secret Service protection against President Trump, and specifically at various different events. And Susie Wiles is the one that said no. And so now that's coming out because of the White House Correspondents' Dinner attempted assassination attempt. And I said Susie Wiles would be next to go, especially after that horrible Vanity Fair article that she did. She's a moron.
All right, well, that's on the record. Let me, Josh, weigh in on briefly. I host the show Global Financial Reset. You, of course, would have been a guest from time to time. It's just that our schedules conflict because we run that live, and you're already committed. But I'll cut excerpts from this discussion, perhaps, and run them on that show because it is strictly economic related. And what's your synopsis? Because you and I haven't talked about the financial matters in quite some time, and things have accelerated. We have the press release from the Treasury Department about Trump's signature on the new money. Hey, new money, there's a little, statement there. It's been drummed up quite a bit by Dan Scavino, Scott Bessent, and the president about the dissolving of the income tax code and the IRS and Federal Reserve, all of that stuff. And then the advancements on crypto. I'm throwing a lot of stuff because I know you know the subject, and have you summarize it all for us from your perspective. Also, the demolition, the controlled demolition of the existing system and the existing Federal Reserve note, and the submergence hopefully at the right time, the new dollar that moves to stablecoin, moves to QFS. What's your synopsis of how we've progressed since you and I have spoken? Where are things at? And particularly, I'll close it out with a particular question about crypto, but take it away, if you will, from there. Big view of
Yeah.
where that's at.
So 2025 saw a lot of turbulence economically globally. This was specifically to help begin breaking down China's capture over the global economy, obviously through BRICS and what's lesser known as the New Silk Road or the Belt and Roads Initiative. And this is mainly what Donald Trump has done across the world, is dismantled a lot of the Belt and Roads Initiative that China was implementing South and Central America, throughout Africa, Northern Africa, Middle East, throughout Asia. This is what tariffs and renegotiating all the deals were all about. And behind that factionality is that you have to understand is that the majority of the Chinese yuan moves through London banks.
Mm.
And London bankers and financiers are directly behind all of China's rise to power. So when you're dismantling China's systems, you're also dismantling the London financial cartels systems as well. And so one of the things that we predicted back on my show in early 2025, late 2024, was that with Donald Trump coming in and making the claims that he's going to make sovereign wealth fund, Bitcoin strategic reserve, talking about artificial intelligence, that there's a few things that would have to happen. Is number one is you'd have to have a control over all of the various different trade supply corridors on the planet. Number two is you'd have to have a reallocation of natural resources towards positivity towards the United States of America and away from China. And that comes about because understanding that everything is tech-centered when we're moving into this new economic framework. Everything's tech-centered. And the big tech thing that we have to see is AI, artificial intelligence. Now, people out there, I know they're going to be like, oh, well, AI is evil, it's a demon. I don't care. Pandora's box has been opened. You're not closing it. Accept it, live with it. Just understand it's here. You're not doing anything about it.
Correct.
And it's going to rise to the points that I'm going to tell you it's going to rise to. It's going to rise to a point called artificial superintelligence. The first country that obtains artificial superintelligence wins. Think about this as a big game of global power. The first one that hits ASI wins. Now, AI utilizes three core foundations: data, computation, and energy. And so 2025, I said, hey, Trump's going to have to go out there and reallocate primarily global resources, energy resources. He's going to have to pull them away from China. He's going to have to bring them into the United States. And then I said he's going to most likely target the three places where China gets its primary energy: Venezuela, Iran,
Correct.
and Russia.
Correct.
And what do we see? We see Russia working with the United States. This is actually looked at. So if you go back to the Alaska summit, John, remember the Alaska summit back in August of 2025? Trump and Putin meet. The next day, right after that summit, Vladimir Putin orders Arctic LNG, a Russian oil and gas company in the Arctic, to take all of their oil and put it on these container ships and send them out to sea and fill them up to the brim with no contracts and no buyers. Interestingly enough, the day that Donald Trump launched a campaign against Iran and the British banks through Lloyd's of London dropped all the insurance premiums, which closed the strait, and Trump obviously countered that. Oil prices skyrocketed. Nothing, we had never seen this before. Oil prices skyrocketed, and the next day they came crashing down. Why? Because Scott Bassett, as Secretary of Treasury, came out and limited Russian sanctions and said that Russia can now release all ocean-borne oil back to the open market. Well, guess what? Vladimir Putin had already pre-positioned that a day after the Alaskan summit. Go figure. Almost like Putin was told this was going to happen.
Yes.
And Putin in Russia has massively benefited from all of this. And then you have, obviously, immediately Ukraine starts hitting Russian oil infrastructure immediately after that. Now, what are we talking about here? Is we're talking about a reallocation of global energy resources, because you have to stop and curb China's advancement through artificial intelligence. And then once you have that point and you ensure that Russia is now going to side with the United States of America, so you have this kind of non-formal alliance that is coming about economically, primarily right now with Russia and the United States, then the Chinese deep state becomes disempowered. And this is what we're seeing. The Chinese real estate markets are crashing right now. Xi and Trump are meeting at the end of the week. Xi, I believe, is working with President Trump as well, but you have the elders, the CCP elders, where this is Jintao and all these guys. And there's been 3 different coup attempts on Xi over the last 8 months since last summer. If you go back the last 2 years, there's been like 10 through generals and other people. And there's been massive military purges occurring in China. And Xi Jinping has survived them all. And this is the Chinese deep state that works for the global banks, the London bankers that are trying to control it. So what you're seeing right now is kind of a segregation of that, right? And power and control, and Xi taking full power and control of that. Same thing in Iran. The civilian government is rising up against the IRGC hardliners, and they're taking power and control. And once those parts happen and they all fit together, you get peace in Iran. I think Russia and China will be a big part of that. Trump's conference with Xi Jinping, I think trade negotiations, deals will come out of that. I think what you're going to see is the formation of a new global paradigm known as a multipolar world framework, to where we look at the economical systems of this world differently and we start inter-exchanging with trade differently. And how that's going to work is, instead of having the petrodollar, the dollar based upon the transactional nature of oil and gas and held in the reserves of various different countries, and we force them through force and coercion and warfare that keep the dollars in there, what you're going to see is the return of the dollar being backed by assets. Now, typically we think gold and silver. Yes, gold and silver is absolutely going to be a part of this. And I think that that's the way that they're actually going to end the Fed, by the rehypothecation of gold and the repegging of the gold value from the 42.42 value after post-Bretton Woods to the current market value of over $4,000. And that would bankrupt the Fed almost immediately, because they don't have the liquidity to cover that discrepancy cost. It basically negates our whole debt. But I think what's going to happen next is you have to get the Clarity Act through Senate. And once that gets passed, then the Treasury can go directly around the Federal Reserve System. They can borrow money from stablecoin companies almost at zero interest. Actually, it's not even at zero interest. And I want you to see this model. Imagine issuing a bond to a stablecoin company where they're going to print you up $1 billion. And the bond, obviously, you have to pay interest on that, right? But the interest gets paid if the asset appreciates to a certain variable. So if the asset appreciates 5% over a course of period of time, that equates to the amortization of that bond, then it's paid and it's done. Well, here's the key. You have the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is going to take all of the assets of the United States of America, all the resources underneath our feet. It's going to throw it into the Sovereign Wealth Fund. It's going to take the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, all the various different cryptocurrencies. It's going to take all the gold and silver, all the energy, and it's going to throw it into the Sovereign Wealth Fund. It's going to take the ownership of all these various different tech and biotech and AI companies. And Trump is going to go out there and take 10%, just like he did of Intel, and he's going to throw that into the Sovereign Wealth Fund. This is why when people are saying, why is Trump saying dividends from tariffs? Because he's trying to get you to change your language. This is how it understands that they're no longer you're getting a stimulus, you are getting a dividend. You don't owe it back, because that's how the Sovereign Wealth Fund is going to work. All of these things going to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Well, guess what? Now you have an appreciating asset. The sovereign wealth fund is
Yes.
increasing in
Sure.
value every year. So when you base the dollar, the bonds issued for the dollar, on that sovereign wealth fund, you issue that at 5% interest for 20 years maturity, and you give it to a stablecoin company, and in 5 years, it reaches that P amortization and pays that bond back. Well, guess what? You no longer have depreciation of an asset over time. You have appreciation and strengthening of your dollar and increasing purchasing power of your asset over time, to where the interest that you're paying on it is paying for itself through the appreciation of the assets being held in the sovereign wealth fund. Now you match that with what we're beginning to see within the infrastructure that's being built, the tech infrastructure, and you start seeing a completely new, different economic model that is being formulated right now. And we're not the only ones doing it. And so we're saying goodbye to central banks. I think
Yes.
that we're going to see within the next probably 4 to 5 years a removal of the the IRS, and potentially Warsh is going to be the last Federal Reserve chairman that we're ever going to see.
Great stuff, Josh. I can summarize the latter part of what you said, describing the value in the sovereign wealth fund. It's true, real value versus Ponzi scheme digital debt. That's the 40,000 foot view summary of the last thing you just covered. And we're going to conclude. I appreciate your time
Yeah.
on this special broadcast. Just a little fun here. When you mentioned that President Trump and Putin met in Alaska last year, I can see Sarah Palin with her binoculars on the porch. She goes, "There they are," But anyway, I want to mention to our audience that's coming to learn of you, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have your biography in front of you, but I know of you for many years. You're retired Navy 9 years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 10 years Navy.
Yeah.
Not retired. I got out, obviously, but yeah, I consider myself retired.
Okay. So 10 years you served in the Navy. You've been an important voice for all the years that we've all surfaced during this movement. And and I want to ask you one closing question on the economy, then we'll wrap up in a minute. Bitcoin. I get this question a lot from people. I'm talking about the public that I meet with personally on limited wealth coach appointments that I provide, and I refer them to you on the crypto side. In fact, you'll be getting an email tomorrow from a woman I just spoke with. But Bitcoin itself, there's vastly different views. Bitcoin will crash, get out, nothing. Yet the Trumps, as I understand, producing 2.5% of Bitcoin, and the Trumps are certainly in the Bitcoin business. Uh, what's your take on Bitcoin for the layman? Is this something that's going to be a part of the new system? If so, in what way? What about the other 9 ISO compliant cryptos that we've talked about before? Differentiate them if they are to be differentiated. Bitcoin good, Bitcoin bad. What say you?
Excuse me. Okay. Uh, Before I get into Bitcoin, let's actually talk about the ISO 222 stuff framework. Okay.
Sure.
Number one, this is an international organization that is directly linked to all of the globalist organizations.
Hmm.
International Standards Organization. This is the World Economic Forum is the one that sponsored XRP, XLM, and Cardano and multiple others for their ISO framework for them. I mean, this was 2000. You can go back to 2021, 2022 World Economic Forum and pull up how this was actually discussed in Davos, that these would be the new crypto frameworks for their globalist reset. So number one, that's one reason that I'm just like, but there's some in there that I like. But then when I go in here, is Bitcoin is different. Number one is you just had a U.S. Navy admiral testified in Congress saying that the U.S. military is running a Bitcoin node.
Hmm.
That's a Bitcoin mining node, and that comes about through a guy by the name of Jason Lowery. He's a major in the United States Space Force, and he wrote a book a few years ago. He's an MIT graduate, really smart guy, and he wrote a book a few years ago called Soft War. Now, he released a book, and a month later, the DOD rescinded the book.
Hmm.
Okay? So this book you cannot buy. It's like you can find it for $5,000 online with the people who actually got copies. There's online versions. I can send people to it, but it's a great read. You can just go to YouTube or type in Jason Lowery soft war and you'll find out information about it. But what it is it discusses the nature of what Bitcoin actually is. And he claims that Bitcoin is real money. Now, you just talked about we're moving towards a system where our dollars are actually going to be based on real money, not an intermediary of value, but actually representative of real money, that we're actually like trading the real money. Well, that's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is the production, the result of data transactions and energy utilization. It takes energy and computation and data in order to do that. Now, those three words are very important because what did I say were the three core foundations of AI? Data, computation, and energy. Now, why is Donald Trump so interested in Bitcoin? Why is he so interested in cryptocurrency? Number one, Bitcoin has a decentralized node framework. As in, there's no central authority that controls Bitcoin.
Right.
Bitcoin is hundreds of thousands of people who own miners that connect to the Bitcoin node, right? So Bitcoin is owned and operated by a decentralized network of people that nobody knows who they are or where they're at. That's very important.
Yes.
Now, if you have AI infrastructure that's being built out and AI becomes an aspect of national security, how do you ensure that you are 100% vulnerability proof? You build out an ancillary network. Notice what I said here. The three foundations of cryptocurrency: data, computation, energy. The three foundations of AI: data, computation, energy. They use the same computational framework. So building out blockchain nodes throughout the United States will become the Bitcoin capital of the world, crypto capital of the world. This is about building an ancillary backbone and of integrity for artificial intelligence through national security. So a lot of this for Trump is about that, but if that is really the case and the government is going to get involved in that and to ensure that, hey, I'm going to go out there and start my own Bitcoin node and I can go register that with the DOD, and the DOD will even help me, monitor. They'll give you software that monitor. And I'm not saying they do now, but they'll give you software that ensure that you cannot be hacked and vulnerable because you can enter into a DOD node that you become an ancillary backbone for national security. I mean, this is real stuff that happens all the time. So this is what I think is going to happen with all of this. And why is that important is because the price of Bitcoin that's going to happen is going to skyrocket to millions of dollars. Just because of the level of scarcity that Bitcoin has within it, built within it. Only 21 million ever to be minted. There's already 20 million minted. So we're on our last million Bitcoin. There's only 3.25 Bitcoin mined per block. There's like 10 blocks a day. So start doing the math. 2160 is probably the last time you'll ever see a Bitcoin mined. That the price is going to skyrocket because it's scarce. I mean, a lot of institutions are buying up Bitcoin. A lot of wealthy people are buying up Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So right now we are pre public buying of Bitcoin. I mean, most of the public own less than 1% of the Bitcoin. And guess what? The governments own very, very little. The next state of Bitcoin buying is going to be from large governments. So imagine what happens when the United States government goes out there and buys $20 billion worth of Bitcoin. What's going to happen to that price? It's going to skyrocket and go to the moon, which means that you better get your butt in.
Yep. Thank you, Josh. In the next 3 or 4 minutes, let's wrap this broadcast up with what I'll call quick drive-by questions, drive-by answers. These are some things on the minds of everybody listening to us, or many of us. Julian Assange is on the record of stating years back, I think it was 95% of Congress, when all said and done in this war that we're in, 95% of Congress will be gone. What's your take on that?
It's already happening. We've already seen it. Multiple resignations, 46 congressmen and senators not seeking re-election. You just had Swalwell, 4 gone in the last week and a half.
Perfect.
It's already happening.
Beautiful. Next question. 2-party system coming to an end before the general election?
I wouldn't say before the general election. I think that what's going to happen is with the Act Blue scandal is going to come about. You're about to see the downfall of the Democrat Party.
Yes.
This is the end of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And what you see really being pre-positioned by people like Elon Musk and even Bobby Kennedy is a ancillary to pick up the power vacuum. So when the power vacuum of the Democrat Party fails, you're going to have other things that are going to rise up that are going to be organized as America First, but with liberal and lefty views and perspectives that are going to suck up that power vacuum and bring about still an America First agenda.
Thank you. And chaos with I'm speaking now to the podcaster world, closing out with a final question to Josh. Chaos without clarity, problems without solutions. Uh, be careful who you follow in the podcaster world. Keep those words in mind and ponder that for a moment. Whittle down your resources and make sure Josh Reid is at the top of the list of those to continue to follow. The reason I stated that is closing out with this question. Many of the podcasters over these many years have done a great disservice, and there are a lot of good people who have done good work, but many have done a great disservice. I can name a million examples, but here's one, which is my closing question. They said the EBS or the EAS is happening next Thursday at 4 o'clock. Well, the EAS just happened of course, it hasn't. And of course, those were all false forecasts and prediction based on no intelligence whatsoever. Having stated that, in your crystal ball, two-part question as we wrap up. Do you believe the EAS will be utilized? And if so, pre or post midterm?
Well, the AAS was utilized during COVID. I mean, the emergency alert system was utilized. Remember, we were all watching TV one night when the emergency alert message came up on the TV, and up in the right-hand corner, John, it said, "We are with you."
I
Yep.
never caught that. That's interesting.
Yep, that was
Pretty
during
big.
that was during COVID.
Yeah.
Now, in the context of the people with moving the goalpost,
Yeah.
what you're seeing right now, and I'm witnessing this firsthand with a lot of people that I've been kind of talking in private about behind the scenes, is they are losing their audiences, and their audiences are all coming to people like us. Why? Because it comes down with the integrity of the information that you're putting out there. Here's
Mhm.
the thing, John. I've made certain claims over the years because it was factually based. Because I could look at a narrative that was being constructed, and I could say, hey, this is very predictive. I can look at this, and I know this, this, and this is all factual, that this is going to happen. And guess what? I was right. I've
Mhm.
been highly accurate. The
Yes.
reason I'm highly accurate is because the information is factual. But when you base your information off of fiction, off of fantasy, then when you make those predictions, you're always moving the goalpost.
Mhm.
Those people are losing a lot of their audience, and they're all floating over to people like us because we have trust and loyalty because these people have watched us throughout the years and know that, hey, look, they've been over the target, they've been right, they've been saying that this is going to happen, and then this happens. Man, they must have inside information. Some of it is good direction by some people, but most of it is really just understanding how this game is played, understanding the playbook, and understanding the narrative.
Thank
And
you.
and most of these podcasters don't get that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think I've said this before. I'll say it again. George Carlin, garbage in, garbage out. Be careful who and what you follow. Again, chaos without clarity, problems without solutions is a red flag for me. And so whittle your sources down to whatever it is, a couple, a handful, six, whatever, and then do your own homework. Even after
Yep.
you've done that, and come to your own conclusions on things. Because folks, our good friend Juan Savin has told us. I'm paraphrasing. That what we've already been through in this war and what's yet to come, the greatest challenge that we're going to face is in the economic arena. And there are other military folks I speak with on my Eyes on Gitmo military panel and the Global Defense War panel that also concur. We're not out of the woods yet. But to your point, because I always like to end things on a positive note, the golden age is coming, folks. And when you rewind some of this broadcast, when Josh touched on that, you can see that coming sooner than later. I just unofficially state, just my humble opinion, that July 4th may very well mark the unofficial launch shift, bringing us into the beginning of a golden age. And, to our viewers, Josh being military 10 years, you've attended our Global Defense War monthly panel in its
Mhm.
second year now. I think once before. We'd like to have you back, and I'll have Sandy reach out to you.
Oh, we already got it.
Oh,
We
good.
already did it yesterday.
Beautiful. Perfect. Well, folks, you'll want to join Global Defense War military panel. We launch at JMC Broadcasting each and every month. Ricardo Bosi, Derek Johnson, Michael Jaco, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox, retired Lieutenant Colonel Delta Forces Chuck Sellers, Brad Wozni, Josh Reid, powerful panel of people that have had security clearance access and have made this world a better place, a safer place for all of us. And I thank you for that, Josh. And I'm real happy that you're going to be on the panel. Again, Josh, closing us out, best place for people to follow you and your work.
Yep, redpills.tv, redpills.tv.
All right, well, we're going to sign off here. JMC Broadcasting, John Michael Chambers speaking with his voice, but very little, because when you interview Josh, all you have to do is ask a question and relax. He'll unload it all. So thank you so much for doing that, Josh. Greatly appreciated. A lot of great content. Hats off to you. And that's a wrap up here on a special broadcast with Josh Reid.
Join JMC Broadcasting's monthly Global Defense War Military Panel. JMC hosts an esteemed panel of military experts, including Ricardo Bosi, Tom Lennox, Chuck Sellers, Michael Jaco, Derek Johnson, Brad Wozni, and other military guests. Join us each month, where this panel of esteemed guests analyze the current events across a broad spectrum of topics, addressing the questions and concerns that you have. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. John looks forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Global Defense War Military Panel broadcast, right here on jmcbroadcasting.com.